So let's go ahead. We're going to look today at the step 2 selection for labels. To save time, I already went ahead down here and I opened church windows and I opened membership just by clicking on the word membership. Again, we're going to look at labels, and the material I'm going to be referring to is from one of our workbooks. And if you'd like to purchase that, it's available. It's not required, but it's available for purchase. I believe it was the membership 103. Really quick, I'll show you where those are on our website. If you go up to beginning and you click on training workbooks, here you'll see all the different workbooks along with the topics available. And we are looking at labels at membership 203. I'm sorry, I think I said 103, but it's M203. And this is pages 6 through 10 of that book, the most current book. If you have an older book, it may have different topics and labels might look different if it's a really old book. All right, so now let's go back to labels. So I'm going to click on labels on the opening screen. Now this would apply even if I went up to reports export at the top and I chose birthday and did labels or anniversary labels. Anything I do with labels, those formats and save selections and things that I do in labels will be available for all the different kinds of labels you can do. Or if I go this route in the upper left, reports and labels, that will take me to the labels screen. All right, so here we are going to skip on to step 2. Step 1 is selecting who is going to print a label, who you want to print labels for. And again, Rachel did a class on that last Wednesday. That was recorded and it might already be up on the website if you want to view that. So we are moving on to step 2. So we'll click next in the lower right. And if you are looking at the book, I'm at the top of page 6 where it talks about the selection for labels. And as the person who edits the books, I see something I need to change. There have been so many changes. I apologize if I missed some. If you have workbooks and you see things that need edited that I missed from one version to the next, please send an email to support and let us know and I will fix that. The book is calling this, when you first open, the selection for label screen, and it's now called Step 2, Select the Label Layout. And that really tells you, I think, a better description of what you're doing here. You chose the people on Step 1. Now you're telling it, on step 2, what layout do I want? What names do I want it to pull? How many labels? At the very top of the screen, this is important here, we can choose the date of the mailing. And that's really important if you have alternate household or alternate individual addresses, because for those you put in an effective date of when they're at that address, and the date of your mailing will look at, if they have an alternate address, it will look at those dates. So you can change the date of the mailing to have it, look at a certain date if you wanted to. The program defaults to uppercase everything on the mailing label because that's the way the post office prefers it. There's never been an option to change that, but now you can if you'd like. You can uncheck uppercase text for mailing, and then it would just do regular, capital letter for the first letter and, regular lowercase. But the post office does prefer it uppercase, so that's why that is available. Let's look at here the important thing, label layout. Now with version 20, I'm not sure if it was in version 19. I know for version 20, it now comes with 2 preset labels, a family mailing label and an individual name label. The label layout is going to determine what name it will put on the label, not how many you get, but what name. So here we have one called family mailing label and another called individual names. I want to show you real quick. If we go into people, a family mailing label, where it has, that's the actual field I put on that label called family mailing label. The name that is going to pull, it doesn't determine how many, it determines what names it will put on the label. Family mailing label means it's going to pull the name from the left side or from the family side. So the mailing label, exactly what's in that mailing label field, that is what would be on a mailing label and address formatted label. Now the label I showed you that said individual names, that would put the actual name it sees on the individual records. If you ask for one per family and you have 5 people in a family who met your search criteria, then all 5 individual names would be on the label rather than one label with just the family name. So again, let me get my clicking tool back here. So again, if I go back to labels and hit next, let's just look real quick. So a family mailing label, and I'm just going to ask for one per family and hit print. I just want to show you what it looks like. This has just one per family, and it has the actual family name, whatever we put in the mailing label field, which is usually Mr. or Mrs., or if it's just an individual, their individual name, versus the label called individual names, which if I print that, where'd it go? It minimized it. That was weird. Where did my preview go? My computer's being weird. All right, well, let's try closing the preview and try again. There we go. All right. So notice here we have individual names. We don't see that in Mr. and Mrs. that we had before. And here, if we look at this 5th label down, we see all of the different people in the Bernard family: Evan, Nikki, Eric, Stuart, Bernard. Now, if I had asked for one label, because here I did one label per family, so I got one for every single family, but the names on it were different based on the label layout I chose. Let's go ahead. I'm sorry, I got away from looking at the material in the book because I really wanted to show you the difference between label layout and how that doesn't tell you how many. That's what will be on the label versus one label per will determine how many you get per household. If we look at the bottom of 6, let's look at how you actually create the layout. Now, if you just got the program, it's automatically going to have those 2 basic 5160 layouts in the program for you. If you need to make a new label, we just click New Label and turn the page if you're following along in the book. And the program comes with, if you look here under Product, it works with quite a variety. I think they might have added more, but a variety of different manufacturer products. So first you choose the product type or your manufacturer, and Avery Standard is the most common, 30 per page. But you can create all kinds of different labels. And then you choose the product number, which is usually on the box. And again, 5160 is the most common. And I just went away from it. Where'd it go? Oh, it's all right. We'll just leave it there. It's there already. Now I can click Next. And this screen here, I can change the sizing and the spacing. Typically, that's already preset, and you don't need to do any of this. So I would just click Finish rather than Next, but I want you to know that is available. But those are usually all preset by whatever the programmers do with their magic creating the program, and they should line up. But in case they don't, you can go in and edit that sizing. All right, so this opens up the Report Designer. Now here is where we choose what we want to put on the label, what fields we're telling the program, pull this information, this field from the record for this person's label. If we look over along the right, we have a variety of things we could add. The default when you create a new label is to make one that has the family name, the whatever name is in that mailing label field. Now again, this tells us, I guess I got ahead of myself. On page 8 it tells us this label is going to print Mr. and Mrs. or whatever's in that mailing label field. Now if your program did not come with those 2 already in there, if you're on an older version, then you will need to create your labels. So we'd create this and we click Save As. We could name it this. I don't know if it'll, but now we're going to have 2 of the same name. I'm going to show you something here real quick. Oh no, I just left that Avery Standard. If you have the newest version where it comes with the presets, you cannot delete those. So those are always in there for you, those most common used. One with this, that's the family name, and one that's the individual name. But again, if you don't have the newest version, then you need to create your labels. Let's go ahead and look at how we edit them. I just pulled up the Avery Standard that I just made, and I want to click Edit on that. Now that was how we can make a new label and just make one for the family. You can take existing label formats you have and use those and change them, and then when you save them, name it a different name, and it won't overwrite whatever you started with as your base. Here I'm going to go ahead and just right click on mailing label and address in the upper left here, and I'm going to delete that and show you how to make one of those individual name and address labels in case you don't have the newest that already comes with it. So here from the left, I'm sorry, my other left, the right side, mailing label and address is what you would drag over if you were making a new one or you needed to make one that's just a family name. We're making one with individual names. So we're going to click and drag over names and addresses, and that will simply be the individual names. So I can click Save, and I could put in a new name for this. And when you create your label layout, I would not name it after whatever search you did on step 1, because these layouts aren't specific to your search. These layouts are things you can use over and over again. And the layouts, like I said a little bit ago, the layouts are just telling the program what to go grab off of the record. So again, the layout is not a saved search from the beginning of step 1. It's a layout of just what fields it's going to grab from whoever you search for. So you can create a layout of individual names, another for family names, and you can use those anytime that's what you want on a label. So let me hit OK here and close. So now we see we have the ones that came with the program, the family, mailing, and the individual name. But then I went ahead and showed you how to create those. We have the 5160 address, which is essentially the same as this family mailing label that comes with version 20. And then we also made an individual name label. Now also, let's talk about a few more things on this screen. Just below label layout, I did mention we can choose to do one label per individual, giving unit, or family. What individual means is if I choose individual, that will print a separate label for every person who met the criteria that I put on step 1. So if I choose individual and click print, and I did an individual layout, it's putting their actual individual name rather than the family name. Notice here, if we look in this first column, we see Jen, Arnold, and Richard have separate. There's Bartholomew, 2 for Bell. There's the Bernard family with their 4 different family members, each getting a separate label. Now the difference here is if we do that individual name and choose family, which we looked at a little earlier, because we asked for one label per family. I don't know why this computer is being kind of strange. It's minimizing my previews. Try that again. All right. I'm not sure what. Let's try. Try one more time. Print. There we go. All right. So here we see I did one label per family, and we can see if we look at the 5th one down, that's a great example. The Bernards, we see all 4 of the family members. When we asked for individual, we got a separate label. But now that we're saying one label per family, we're seeing each one of them, each of their names on one label. Now, the one difference here is giving unit. If you're doing a search that involves donations and you want your labels to be addressed according to how they give, that is where you can choose giving unit. And when you do that, it shouldn't, now I don't know if they've changed it, it shouldn't matter what format label you choose, because when you choose giving unit, let me click print here, it looks at whether the family is marked gives with family. And if they're marked gives with family, then any of those people will be combined to one label addressed with the family name. Versus here we can see with the Bernard family, it looks like Eric gives alone. We have someone else in the family who gives together, maybe the husband and wife, Mr. and Mrs. Evan Bernard are getting a label just addressed to the family. And then Stuart Bernard is getting an individual. So if I'm remembering correctly, I think Eric and Stuart were children. And then looks like husband and wife are marked gives with family, so they're getting a label just to them. Whereas the children who are marked gives separately or are not marked gives with family, they're getting their own individual label. So again, I would not use one label per giving unit unless your labels pertain to donations and you want them addressed according to how they give, as a unit or as individuals. If you're just doing regular membership labels, then you'd either do one per individual if you want one for every person in the house, or one per family if you want one per household. But again, remember, this layout up here that you choose, that is going to determine what name it puts on the label, the family name or every single individual name on one label, or excuse me, let me get a sip of coffee. I have a little tickle all of a sudden. Let me mute so I'm not coughing in your ear. Oh, I'm sorry. It's that time of year where the weather change, I think, is just going to wreak havoc on everyone. We have almost 70, I think we had over 70 degrees here yesterday in Ohio. So, okay, sorry. All right, I forgot what I was saying there. I'm sorry. But each of these different formats or label layouts, that is what's going to determine which name, family name or individual names, goes on that actual label. A few more things here. In version 20, this include additional family members linked. You have the ability now, I'm not going to go into detail about how it works, but I want you to know what that little checkbox is. You have the ability now to link people to other households. So if you have, a divorced family with children that, go back and forth between parents, you can link them to both households. And what that little checkbox means is if, you have child residing in church windows in mom's house, but you've also linked her to dad's house, you can check this, and if you're printing a label for dad, then she or he, the child, would also be included on that label if I check include additional family members linked. Excuse me. Also, you can change the start position of your labels. Maybe you've only used half a sheet of your labels, and you're not starting right at the top, so you want to start halfway down. You can tell the program to start at a different position and then click print. Oops, let me choose one label per. It's telling me stop. Notice it's starting at label position 10, down at the very bottom, the 10th one, and then starting the next column. So you could change where your first label printing will start with the start position. If you do bulk mail and you own the Postage Saver program, that integrates with church windows, and to use Postage Saver you do have to check use Postage Saver. And then a little screen comes up where you would have to link Postage Saver to your church windows program. A lot of people are moving away, I think, from Postage Saver though, because bulk mail, before you pay for anything with bulk mail, check with your post office. It seems like post offices are different in different areas as to what they require. You'd think it would be uniform, but we hear different things from different people in different areas of the country. When the post office started their intelligent barcoding, when they started saying they were going to do that, they have something for bulk mail on their own website that will help you with your bulk mail, and it doesn't cost anything. I don't think so. Definitely, before you pay for anything for bulk mail, if you're thinking about doing bulk mail, check with your post office first. Okay. Another thing here, if you're searching, if you want to make sure somebody gets a label, here I can search for a name and see, is that person on my labels? You also have a little checkbox here where if I don't want to print labels for some of the people that came up, I can uncheck their name, and then it's only going to print what I've asked for. Along the bottom, you can click back to go back to step 1 if you need to do something. I could uncheck print for all and then just check the people I wanted if that's something I needed to do, or I can click check print for all to check everyone. All right. I apologize. I'm not good at keeping my head in the book. Last thing on page 10, it does talk about, there's a tab, I always forget it's here, organization info. Here you can choose, it automatically defaults to what's set up under system information, but you can set up other things or change information as well. And you could, if you wanted to, use this to create labels for your church. Now we could also, let's see, could do a return labels. Now it shows in the book, you can use it if you want to print return address information on the labels you send. You would choose a label product that is large enough, and it has an example there of a 5163 label, and you could include that information on there as well. But that is all pulled from the system information and what you put in for your church. Last, and I'm sorry, we are at 120. I think I kind of showed already how to change a label design. We can just go into Edit Label. Maybe you want to create labels that are actually just names and not even the addresses. So maybe I want to cut that, and from the list over here, maybe I just want names. So I can now click Save As, and I'm going to put here, instead of overwriting what I already made, I brought up that one just to use to edit. 5160, just names. And by saving it with a different name, excuse me, notice now all my others are still there. It did not remove the one I just put in. All right. I am at the end of what I wanted to show you. I'm sorry I went over by a minute. I see Rachel got it here, and she answered another question. Let me see. Somebody has a new one. If a child is in 2 separate households, does the child's name need to be included in both households? That's entirely up to you and the family. We don't have any rule about you have to have the name in both households, but I would ask the parents, do you want the child showing in both households? I would think probably, if they are amicable and they go back and forth and they're both members, then I would think you probably would want to, but we don't have a rule about including the names in both households. But that's where you could use the link right here. Let me find it. We'll say child, this 18-year-old. And actually, you caught me off guard here. If you want to call in, I can show you how to link. It's been a while since I've done this when I wrote the book. So if you want to call in, I can show you how to link. No, the child doesn't need to be in both households to link them to another household. That's exactly what this is. You can put them in the household they actually reside in, but then you can link them to another house if you'd like to, show that link. Let's see. I haven't done this for a while, so I'm sorry. I do not remember right off the top of my head to show you how to link, but if you'd like to give us a call, I can show you how to do that. Does anybody have questions about labels? Or Rachel, do you? We'll hold off on that. Okay. All right, if you're in the middle of typing, then go ahead and hit enter so I don't close the room, and then you can type the rest of your question. I just don't want to close the room while you're in the middle of typing. You are welcome. Is there an option to play with fonts a little bit, say for name tags? Sure, if you go into Edit Label, you can click on whatever field you want, and then up along the top of the report designer you can choose the font name, the size, you can bold and italicize. play with background colors, foreground colors. So all those controls for font size and type and things like that would be right within the report designer. And then you just save your change and close with the X in the upper right. All right, are there other questions? Somebody asked, when my program is updated, will I lose my save labels, save selection criteria? That all depends on your version. If you're moving from 19 to 20, no. If you're on a much older version, with the old way of doing labels, moving into the newest, I believe it was 15 to 16. I'd have to look on our website to know for sure, or check with another tech, because that was many years ago, moving from the very old membership module and donations. When that all changed, you did have to make a note of your different save selections and your saved layouts. Yeah, Rachel's going to check for you, though. It depends on your, most current, no. You should not lose any of your save selections, save labels, anything if you're moving from 19 to 20. Those should all still be there. Unless there's a bug I don't know about. Is there, Rachel? No, they will stay, she said. Okay. All right. Are there more questions? All right, if there are no more questions, I'm going to go ahead and end this webinar. Thank you for attending. I apologize if I was a little disjointed. I'm feeling out of sorts today. And again, I hadn't done a webinar since, I think, 2017? Yeah, I think it was last year. Okay. All right. But again, thanks for joining. And this is recorded and will be added to the website at some point in the future. I believe on Thursdays, Robert does it still. And have a great day. Thanks. Bye.